Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our second virtual coffee and conversation. I am delighted to be joined this morning by our very own Senator Gary Peters, who is working tremendously to make sure that the residents of Michigan are represented, and not just Michigan, but just across our country, that people are being properly represented in a time where we know representation not only counts, but it's something that's not necessarily happening at the top. So, Senator Peters, welcome. How are you?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Ayers. I'm Gary to you. We've known each other a long time. And everybody can call me Gary, but you and I have been friends for a long time, and it's great to be with you again. I was reminiscing with you before this and being in person with your town hall that you have in Detroit, and that was a great event. I hope we can do that again. Hopefully we'll all be able to come together sooner rather than later. I think we're all wishing for that. But I appreciate this opportunity, Councilmember Ayers, or Janae, if I may call you that, to talk about some things that are happening in Washington. And, I've been in the middle of all this in my role as the ranking member. I'm the ranking Democrat on the Senate Homeland Security Committee and Government Affairs, which means I oversee FEMA. And as you know, the Federal Emergency Management are the ones that are coordinating the federal response. So we're on the phone regularly. I was with the administrator yesterday on the phone talking about personal protection equipment and testing and how do we get more testing supplies, all of those things that are we have to get in order for us to get through this crisis. And particularly in the city of Detroit that has been particularly hard hit, how do we wrap our arms around to really focus more and more resources into the city and other hotspots like Detroit around the country. But I know one issue that you wanted me to talk about is the HEROES Act that I've put forward and proposal to deal with our heroes who are in necessary jobs that are going to work. Certainly, we want to help small businesses. I've been very involved in the payroll protection program with small businesses and keeping businesses going so we can get through it and to make sure that folks who are unemployed can have a roof over their head and food on the table, expanding unemployment benefits dramatically. But I want to make sure we're taking care of those folks who have to go to work every day. They are in absolutely necessary jobs. They don't have the luxury of being able to work from home or to shelter in place and to be able to use online telework kinds of programs. They have to go there to earn a living, and more importantly for society, we need them. They're absolutely essential jobs. We can't function without the work that they do. And in addition to getting our thanks, which they deserve, and we should thank them every time we see them as we go out, they also deserve to have some money in their pocket, extra money to deal with the fact that they're putting themselves at risk, they're putting their families at risk. And so, I've been proposing this HEROES Act, and we've got some good news. We'll report on that, but so far. But the HEROES Act basically says if you are in one of those necessary jobs and you're interacting with the public and you're putting yourself and your families at risk, you should get additional pay. Basically patterned after hazard pay that we have in a number of jobs or the U.S. military. You get paid more if you're in a combat zone than if you're not, because you're at greater risk and you get hazard pay. And so think of folks there and how we define that. And it has to be defined a lot broader than what usually comes to mind for people. When we think of folks in necessary jobs, we think of our doctors and nurses and medical techs. They are surely all heroes. We need them to go to work to make sure they're taking care of folks. We need to keep them healthy. We've got to make sure they have personal protection equipment and the tools necessary. But the list is a lot broader than that. And when you think of a hospital, it's also the custodial staff and the janitors that are in the hospital. If they don't go to work every day, if they're not making sure that that hospital is spotless and it's sterilized, it doesn't function. You have to have those jobs. Those jobs are absolutely critical. And yet when they go to work every day, they put themselves at risk. And when they go home at night, they put their families at risk.
That's right.
Think of other jobs like that. As we shelter in place, those of us fortunate to be able to do that, we still need to go to the grocery store. If we don't have food on our table, we can't shelter in place. And we have grocery store workers who are stocking the shelves, who are working day in and day out to make sure that we can continue to survive. But they're putting themselves at risk. Folks in the whole supply chain. When thinking about pharmacies, you think of our transit folks who you have to ride on transit, and the people who are there making sure people can get from point A to point B. Those are putting themselves at risk to do that vital job. Our
Absolutely.
postal workers, folks who are delivering the mail and getting it to every day. We got to have postal workers. So those folks should all qualify. And under this proposal, if you are in one of those jobs, you would receive an additional $13 an hour on top of whatever your regular pay is. So you get your regular pay, and then you get a bonus of 13 hour above that, and it'll run through from when the pandemic started to win wherever this comes to an end. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but as long as it lasts, folks would be able to get that additional pay.
So it is retroactive.
Yeah, that's the way I've proposed it, and we've got to make sure we're going to be able to get that. It's not a done deal, obviously. It's in the
Right.
proposal, but it should be. You folks have been putting themselves at risk from the beginning. We shouldn't treat it any differently. So that's the way that I view it, and the House proposal deals with some of that.
So do we have a defined list yet of, these are the people that are eligible for the Heroes Fund?
Well, we do, and the list is still being worked through. And I'll say that the good news is that the proposal that I've been talking about is actually part of the House proposal over in the House. They put together a Heroes proposal. They haven't voted on it yet. We're expecting them to vote shortly, but that's been put out. And on that list, I mean, they've got folks, as I mentioned, like healthcare, first responders, our police and fire and other folks who are out there on the front lines, social services, food supply, transit, janitorial, waste management folks, postal service, tribal governments, election support, journalism. I mean, it's folks that we've got to have out there that are critical for it. So the House has put together that list. We're also going to be working that list, and I'm hearing from other folks that we want to make sure are part of it. I mean, we're thinking about people in our corrections facilities as well, where are definitely our hotspots right now, people who are working there. These are folks that we need to make sure are being treated fairly. And in my mind, being fairly means you get hazard pay.
That's right. So what's the next step for the proposal?
So the proposal is now before the House. The House will vote on it, and it could come shortly. I haven't heard today if they're coming back Friday, but there was some talk about that happening. If not, it'll vote, I think, fairly quickly in the House, and then it'll come to the Senate. And we are pushing Mitch McConnell, who is the leader, to have us move forward on additional help to deal with the COVID-19. Right now, he's saying he's not interested in doing that. So we're going to put as much pressure as we can to say people are hurting out there. They're continuing to hurt. We need to take action, and we need to move this bill. And when the House sends it to the U.S. Senate, we have to take it up. But right now, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, as you know, control the floor of the Senate. And so we're going to have to continue to put pressure on them. Got
it. Well, I know that you have to go to the floor, so I don't want to take up much more of your time. But it was it was my privilege, my pleasure rather, to make sure that we sent a resolution from City Council that I sponsored to make sure that we support you in your efforts. Like I said, we are friends, and I am proud to call you a friend because you fight for people, you have a good heart, and I think that this is just extremely important. And we're not going to keep you because we need you on that floor so you can fight for our heroes. And so thank you, Gary. Thank you for being with us.
Well, Janae, thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you. And thank you for being such a passionate and strong fighter for the people in the city of Detroit. And that resolution you sent, all that is important. It's important for my colleagues to know that people back in our states care deeply about this. There's unified support for it. And it's doing the right thing. And we have to make sure we step up and do the right thing. So thank you for always being a champion for the people of Detroit and being so passionate. And you stay safe and healthy. And I look forward to seeing you in person sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, we'll pray for you and have you girded up while you walk onto that floor with those folks. So
take care, Janae.
Thank you. Take care. We also have the privilege today, as we talk about heroes, to be joined by our fire commissioner, Mr. Eric Jones. Hello, Commissioner.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, I'm wonderful. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity. I really appreciate you. And I just want everybody in the community to know what a brilliant warrior you are for the first responders, specifically the fire department. You I got appointed in 2015, and every step of the way, everything we brought before the table. I mean, you even brought things to me, suggestions to me, just to show how much you care about the first responders. And if you care about the first responders, it truly shows that you care about the citizens, because we go to serve the citizens, and we greatly appreciate you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. And then you went and buffed your head for me today. Look at that.
That's
shiny.
the Aveeno.
Yes, I'm here for it. I am here for it. And let me just say this to you guys that are tuning in and listening. This is a running joke that we have, because every time I see Commissioner Jones, when I tell you it's not a piece of, look at him, he putting his head down so y'all can see it. It's not a piece of stubble. It's shiny, the whole nine. And so for those of you that may not know, Commissioner Jones, outside of now running our fire department, has got what, over 20, 30 years of experience as a police officer. So so when we talk about first responders and heroes, he understands what it means on both sides. And so just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to come on and talk to the citizens about what it is that DFD is doing, what you all have experienced. Just give us a quick update.
Sure. So I want to start by talk about the state of our members and the impact that the COVID-19 virus has had on our members. So we have approximately 1,150 members, firefighting operation, the EMS division, the fire marshals division, the arson division, training, our central dispatchers, all of them. So from that group, we've had a total of 620 of those members tested. 81 were positive. We have 32 people still off duty in some form of quarantine or isolation. We've returned 247 members to work. And that part is the part that I really want to highlight, because a lot of other cities are having problems getting their members to come to work. I mean, they're even going so far as to have mutual aid agreements to bring outside departments into their cities. And these are major cities to help answer their runs. This is the most amazing part. We actually have more units available now than we did pre the pandemic. Right. I mean, EMS had 0 sick calls today. Fire had 6 sick calls. The entire department is here. We're running anywhere from 26 to 28 ambulances, transporting ambulances a day. We're running 46 fire companies a day. We're having absolutely no problem with staffing our units. And that's in large part due to their dedication and their deep respect for the citizens of Detroit. So we really appreciate you guys. We know how much you, Councilmember Ayers, and the citizens support the fire department. Our medical response, our global medical response, and that includes our MFRs and our EMS. Our response time is 7 minutes and 30 seconds, well below the national average, which is 8 minutes.
Right.
We had 52 building fires last week, and the response time for that was 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Phenomenal, the best in the country.
That's right.
Our EMS supervisors are in the nursing homes, testing our dear elderly population. They transitioned into the adult foster care facilities, and now they're going to the senior apartments and moving through those. So we're doing everything we can to get a grasp on this virus and eradicate
the house dens.
Yes. Rick, can you? Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, Eric, you went right into the few questions that I had with the statistics, because I think that's important. And I know sometimes we use jargon, and so I did want to make sure that the people listening, that you understand that when we say MFR, our firefighters were cross-trained some years ago. We started the program to be medical first responders, and that's what MFR is. So that means that they could get dispatched to a scene, and it's a medical scene. And so they are equally as exposed as our EMS workers. So it's important that we made sure that our DFD, Detroit Fire Department, had everything that was necessary to keep them safe, because they're exposed. Their exposure level was high. And Commissioner Jones went straight in, did the things that he needed to do to keep his staff and his team together. So what would you say? Would you say that at this point, we are moving in the right direction and nothing is affecting our staffing levels and all of that? I mean, I think you said it, but I just want to reiterate that.
Yeah, and I want to back up and give some credit to our training academy,
Yeah.
to Dr. Dunn, to everyone. You know, we were at the beginning of this, and we set the standard for all of the protective measures, all of the job aids to tell our members how to deal with these patients. And truth be told, we were dealing with this stuff before it became a pandemic, meaning we already had policies in place for airborne and bloodborne pathogens. They know how to approach and handle infectious diseases. So the entire city used the Detroit Fire Department's protocol and all the measures we put in place to overlay on the other city departments. So I'm so very proud of our academy staff. Dr. Dunn's duties have expanded exponentially. And yes, we're trending in the right direction. Our runs have stabilized. The runs are actually below what they were. April was terrible. It was extremely busy. That was the battle right there. We saw a peak in the exposures, a peak in the runs, a peak in our members being off duty and being sick. Obviously, we lost Captain Franklin Williams, and I just want everyone to keep his wife, Shanita, in mind. And we made it through, and I'm so thankful for them and thankful for their dedication and thankful for all of the support. But I do believe that we're trending in the right direction. I will say, yesterday I went over to, and I know you're there all the time, I went over to the state fairgrounds, and I was leaving. I came back down 8 Mile because I was headed to the health department. I went southbound on the service drive, and that basketball court, they were playing full-fledged playing basketball. So we still have these little pockets where people are not abiding by, social distancing protocols or whatever. But I think that's few and far between, as we've seen throughout the city.
Yeah.
The majority of people are taking the protective measures. So if we can reduce those and start eliminating those few pockets, then we're going to be well on our way to getting out of this.
That's great. And what did you think about the whole Feed the Front Lines campaign? I know that they, where was it, at 56s? I think it was 56. Yeah. Anyway, the taco bar, Detroit Taco Bar came and they brought food and all that. So what was the response from your team to the Feed the Front Lines campaign?
Super thankful. And I think that is in large part one of the reasons why our guys are coming to work, because firefighters, they cook all the time, but right now everybody is out responding, making sure, and it means so much. It means the world to them for someone to cook for them, for someone to bring the food to them and say, hey, look, you guys don't cook today. Don't cook today. We have food for you. Thank you. We appreciate your dedication. We appreciate you guys putting your lives and your families in jeopardy. It meant everything. And I appreciate everyone that was involved in that.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You're very humble in your statement, but I'm going to say it for you and say it with your chest. They took all of this from the Detroit Fire Department's playbook. And we've got some great men and women all throughout that department. Not to say that we're minimizing anybody else, but oftentimes people think that firefighters are sitting around waiting to see smoke. And that's not it. There's smoke everywhere all the time. You just don't know sometimes what that smoke looks like, but they do. And so I want to thank you so much for just being a diligent and effective leader and pushing the men and women through during this time. And you guys are going to have a class coming out soon, right? Yeah.
So we're also on the forefront of this. So a lot of people are struggling with how they do hire and say, wait a second. Just because it's a pandemic, the last thing we want to do is let vacancies grow in our public safety department. So again, our academy staff figured out a way to do virtual training. There are certain things that the candidates have to come to the academy for. but they don't have to sit in class and listen to a lecture. Why can't you do the lecture on Zoom? And if they have to come do a mannequin or dummy drag, then you bring them in. You bring them in 2 or 3 at a time, and you figure that out. So DC Sims, Chief Green, Lieutenant Forbes or Captain Forbes now, they're all waiting. They're putting together a plan for the firefighters. It's obviously going to be a larger class, so we got to get the details together, but we're gonna do the hiring for our firefighters as well. And I'm so proud of that. This didn't stop us. It made us better. It made us more efficient.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm not sure if we have anybody on the line that's gonna that may have a question. So if you want to just hang out with us for a minute, we would appreciate it. We don't have too much longer. So if there's anyone that does have a question for the commissioner, now is the time. So please press *9 if in fact you have a question.
The first question we have are, what are response times for fire and EMS?
Okay, so last week for fire, our response time was 5 minutes and 40 seconds. For EMS was 7 minutes and 59 seconds, but we can't leave out the firefighters' medical response because they respond first, and EMS will come if there needs to be a transportation of the patient. So it's 7 minutes and 30 seconds for our medical response and 5 minutes and 40 seconds for our fire response.
Thank you. And yeah, Rick, Commissioner Jones pretty much covered the other 2 questions that I see on here. I don't know if someone else has their hand raised. Can you see that now or no?
I don't see anything.
Yeah,
there's no questions for the commissioner at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, Rick, were we able to get MPO Womack on yet?
No, he hasn't joined the call yet.
Okay. Have you reached out to him?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll skip ahead. Thank you, Eric. Sorry. So we're going to go right into our state legislature update. And we have Ms. Stephanie Washington, who is the Director of Governmental Affairs for the City of Detroit, and Andy Levitt, who is the partner with Corey Johnson Levitt. And I'm glad you guys could be here with us. Give us a quick update on what's going on.
Thank you, Member Ayers, and thanks for having us today. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just add a little bit more to what Senator Peters spoke on. Sure. Regarding the HEROES Act, if you wouldn't mind. And it's just really, really quick. But just wanted to let you know, this is a $3 trillion piece of legislation that just goes a little, well, I mean, honestly, it's a dream bill right now as it stands. So it, as he mentioned earlier, it speaks to first responders, more funding for first responders, frontline health workers, transit employees, teachers, and other essential workers during this time. So it also, which we really like, and as the steward of the budget chair in the city's budget, I just wanted to talk about this for a minute because, I mean, obviously Detroit has been hit probably one of the hardest areas as we are considered a hot spot during this pandemic. So we've lost a lot of revenue as other municipalities, but it's probably been a lot more intense here because of the demands on our first responders, our businesses that have been closed. So this particular HEROES Act speaks to lost revenue that, we can replace prior to COVID. So right now, and I won't go too granular, but right now they're anticipating in this bill $500 billion for the states, and that would be distributed among the states. And then in addition to the $500 billion, there'd be $375 billion allocated to the cities. And I mean, this bill is just beautiful right now as it stands.
Let me stop you for a second, Ms. Washington. I just want to go back. So $500 billion for the states, as in the 50 states.
Correct.
It would be $100 billion per state.
Right.
And do we know how they are determining what municipalities get? Like, how are they breaking that up?
So right now, the way they see it'd be 51 billion divided equally among the 50 states and DC.
Gotcha. Okay.
We'd all have to share in that. And then there'd be 49 awarded based on the state's share of the COVID cases, and then 150 billion awarded based on the state's share of population.
Got it.
So right now, you know, again, this is what is proposed. I'm sure there'll be tons of amendments. So right now, I'm just literally just giving you just a general, just kind of basis of what is being proposed. So what we've been told is the House, which is controlled by Democrats, will be voting on this tomorrow, and they see it being it passing late tomorrow after, of course, all the amendments go through. They're not believing that the Republicans are as supportive, but the Dems rule the House, so it'll probably get through. Where there is a hurdle, as Senator Peters said, and he has his work cut out for him, is Majority Leader McConnell. He hasn't established now, so he knows this is going to come out of the House. He hasn't established a timetable with the Senate, you know, to put this before the Senate to talk to this. So it just really shows his and the Republicans' kind of reluctance to approve this additional spending. So again, you know, Senator Peters and the Democratic senators have their work cut out. So we'll see. Let's keep our fingers crossed, because any alliteration of this, I mean, especially when it speaks to lost revenue for the states and the local municipalities, would just be great. Right. One other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, and you probably are so familiar, but so there is a consensus revenue estimating conference, and there's one in January and one in May. The one in May will convene tomorrow at 9 a.m. And just for those who are watching, I'll just give you a little bit more detail. This report includes a national and state economic forecast for years 2019 through 2022. So we anticipate, you know, the appropriators of the House and the Senate speaking on this at this conference, and the state, of course, budget director and or the state treasurer. So that is we'll all be tuned into that tomorrow at 9, because, you know, obviously it's more important now than ever to see what our economic forecast looks like, because it'll probably not be what we want to hear, but we'll have to make adjustments, and it helps us understand how to move forward as far as revenue sharing and just any cuts they're talking about. We have to fight with the other municipalities to get our fair share and protect what we have.
Let me ask you a quick question, and you know, everybody knows this, so it's not new that I come from the world of hospitality, working with Unite Here, being a person that worked in the casino. We know that we're losing $600,000 a day for each day that they're closed, but my housekeepers and my security guards and all those folks, they are essential, and they have taken the first and greatest hit. Well, I'll generalize that it's the greatest hit, but when they close, and they close hard. And so my people that work at the stadiums and all of that, are they included in any of these relief packages? Because I don't think that oftentimes people remember us in this. And so do we know if they're on any of these lists?
So I can honestly say, I think the way they are captured or thought of on this list of, you know, the HEROES Act is they're looking to extend the unemployment insurance until January to just help those folks that are unemployed or, you know, just are not receiving a paycheck from their, you know, the businesses. So I believe that's the way they're looking to capture it. But again, you know, that could change. And honestly, that's something that we can advocate for as well.
Yeah, I see that Senator Peters still has some folks on the line. So I hope you guys are listening about my housekeepers, because nobody's staying in a hotel, you know, and those are the folks that literally, they live in our cities, in the heart of Detroit. They keep that dollar matriculating throughout our community. And we need to make sure that we are setting up something to make sure that they are taken care of, because, I've said this time and time again, we are the people that make coming to a city enjoyable. From the time you get to the airport in Detroit, those are people from my union. And then you go out, you go to the stadium, you go to a show, you go here, you go there. You've touched a Unite Here, a hospitality worker somewhere along the way. And so it is imperative that we make sure that we include them. Andy, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and also I might have, because there's so many elements to this, I might have overlooked it, but
Okay.
Andy, if you go ahead.
I just, to Stephanie's point, it maintains the additional $600 a week in unemployment or unemployment pandemic insurance. It also does another $1,200 per person payment. It would continue that for the original CARES Act. So both those would obviously follow those folks that are unemployed. The issue in Michigan is we've shortened our unemployment from 26 to 20 weeks. So if this goes on further, it gets out past that 20 week, there have to be some policy changes. Potentially the governor has extended it via emergency order, but it's unclear if that'll hold up in court if someone decided to challenge it. So that'll be a policy conversation probably coming in late June, I would say, at the state front on it.
Okay, and I think that it's important for us to reiterate, and I know we've said it before, but the city of Detroit is taking a huge economic hit as we start talking about not just the casinos being closed, but people come here to do things, right? This is normally our hot time of year. We've switched the auto show to be in June. And so the money that we would have gotten in January, we didn't receive. And so it's just a major shift of a lot of dollars that we planned for in the last budget that we approved. And now you're talking about that money doesn't exist to see that budget through, nor does it exist to push a new budget through. And so we had to be very frugal. And I know a lot of people had complaints, but at the end of the day, we have to be fiscally responsible and we have to be proper stewards of the small amount of money that we do have. And when we start to talk about income tax with nobody working, unemployment doesn't get taxed by the city of Detroit. So you may get a tax out of it for the state, but not for the city. And I think those are some things that people need to know, because I don't think we all understand it, or maybe not even understand it. It's just not at the forefront of the conversation. And so I don't know if you all wanted to speak more about that, or what this fiscal impact looks like and why we need to make sure we are lobbying hard.
Stephanie, I can jump in and kind of talk a little bit about both CARES to HEROES to state budget and how they're kind of all intertwined. I mean, state government generally relies heavily on the federal government for all sorts of funding, but we also have our own general fund and unrestricted funds that we can spend. And that is what is taking a hit. So Senate Fiscal released this morning ahead of the consensus revenue estimating conference tomorrow that the general fund for this fiscal year, the one we're currently in, is down $1.4 billion. And school aid fund is down $1.2 billion. So that means we have to
say those numbers slowly so they can clearly understand.
General fund for this fiscal year, which ends September 30th, is down $1.4 billion.
Billion.
At the state, yes. And the school aid fund is down $1.2 billion. So that means they have to make up those cuts between today and the end of the year. So it's really essentially like cutting twice as much money because it's a condensed period of time. So you have to get twice as much, which is why the real flaw in the first CARES package was not allowing states to use the money they allocated to states to backfill revenue. They also didn't allow local municipalities. So the money that has been allocated to states and cities thus far is only for prospective, unbudgeted COVID response. So OT for paramedics, you could file and ask for reimbursement on that because of the pandemic. If you're having money for testing, some of those things can be reimbursed. But the fact your revenues are just cratering because no one's come to the city, casinos are closed, and all the things you pointed out is not an eligible expense right now.
Exactly.
So I think in the HEROES Act, the additional money that they set aside for local communities and states is incredibly important. We will need more money. But probably most imperative is the just sheer flexibility. The money comes with very little strings attached to it. So you would receive the money, and you, as the person closest to your community, would then be able to set the budget as you see fit to best. It really puts a lot of trust in local governments and local communities, which I think is great and should be how it's done. And it's a very efficient way to get money. So I think there will be two fights in that HEROES Act: the amount of money that they send to states and locals, and the strings that I would say Senate Republicans will want to place on the money and how it's spent versus what's not. And there will be a give and take on both of those. And the determination may be less strings, less money for less strings, or more strings attached for more money. Those are all be the machinations that will play out at the federal level.
Gotcha.
And how that money flows to the state will be incredibly important, because the city relies on its own local revenue, but also relies on state revenue sharing.
You went exactly where I was going to go. Go ahead.
So if we have a lack of revenue sharing to the city because our state budgets are hit so hard, we'll be in real trouble. So at a minimum, if you think about it like this, if the state is made whole for its lack of revenue, it seems reasonable your revenue sharing line will stay as is. Your other revenues may fall. So we got to figure out a way to get resources for those loss or your lack of income tax and casino tax and other things. If the state is not made whole and you lose both your city taxes and your state revenue sharing, your problem is just now doubled. So it's important that as we're thinking about this, we're thinking about the state needs to be made whole by the federal government to ensure it can maintain its obligations, as well as the city, because we are a creature in statute and constitution of the state. So it's important that we think about it working together. So budget picture in Lansing will rely very heavily on how the federal government determines, I'd say in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We think by Memorial Day, I don't know if Senator Peters' staff want to chime in on timing, but I think the hope is by Memorial Day, they will have completed something, what this looks like.
Wow. Ms. Washington, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Uh-oh, wait a minute. There you are. Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I just want to add one more thing. It's just, this is all the more reason why it's very important for everybody in Michigan, but in Detroit, to fill out the census, the 2020 census. So I'm going to make a big plug to,
yes.
If you're sitting home, you're online, it's 9 questions. They're very easy. Fill it out. Please encourage everyone, because this speaks to the state and federal funding, and as well as the political representation of the city. Right now there was an article that came out today in the news, and it was, Detroit's response rate is one of the lowest among the larger cities. Right now we're at 43%. So I really just want to encourage everybody to talk census. That should just be the conversation. And, if you visit my2020census.gov, you can get all kinds of information. You can fill out the census. It takes probably less than 10 minutes, because I know I've done it. And I also have a toll-free number if you do not have an online presence, but 844-330-2020. So please fill out the census either online, the form, or just give the census a call. But
Can you repeat the number, because you went exactly where I was going to go next, right into census talk, because we start talking about dollars. We know that dollars are associated with people, and people, you got to get counted. Other than that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But if you could repeat the phone number again for me.
Sure, it's 844-330-2020.
Great, thank you so much. And I don't know how to make it more plain, folks. If you or anybody gets a bridge card, guess what? It's because of the census. If you want to know why we didn't get respirators early on, or ventilators rather, it's because they need to know how many people actually are in the state of Michigan. And once they get the records for the census, they are sealed for 70 years. So you don't have to worry about somebody coming to knock on your door. It took me 6 minutes to do it. When you go on the website, it will say, ask you for a code number or whatever. Just scroll past it, because you don't need that. So can't stress enough how important it is. So Ms. Washington, Andy, thank you guys so much for coming and giving us this update. It was such valuable information. Andy showed up with his D-boy hat on. I love it.
The hair is wild. I can't tame it, so I just got to go hat these days. I'm sorry.
I'm not even mad at it. I'm not. No, I'm trying to pretend like it's not gray outside, so I wear my little Hawaiian shirt for you guys.
There you go.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate
Thank you.
you. And maybe you can hang on for a second. We only have a few more minutes left, just in the event we get a question for you. Okay. So we are also being joined this morning by our one of our fantastic neighborhood police officers, who I won't tell you my affectionate nickname for him, Nathaniel Womack. So he is one of our frontline heroes that I am so happy could be with us this morning. So hey, Nate, what's up?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. I'm doing well.
Well, good. Well, tell us what's been going on with you, sir.
Well, around March the 18th of this year, I got started getting sick. Thought it was the common cold. I informed my supervisor, and I left that day. And as I was getting ready to start vacation anyway, so that was going to be my last day until I come back from vacation. So I started thinking, okay, well, like I said, it was cold, and then it progressed. I'm like, okay, well, this feels like the flu, and it progressed, and it got to the point where maybe 10 days in of quarantine, I had seen my doctor on the 24th, and I went through quarantine, and 10 days in, I got to the point where I couldn't breathe. I hadn't been eating or anything like that, so I was conveyed to the hospital, rushed to the hospital because of my breathing, and I was kept in the hospital for some days. So it was a long process. It was probably the most scariest thing that I've ever gone through. I've been sick, but I've never been sick to that point. And you see things like that on TV, and you really don't know what people are going through until you experience what they're feeling. And I was blessed and fortunate to make it through. And even though I got to the point where I really thought that this was it. This was it. And supervisor called me. Got to the point where I really thought that was it. And I started making provisions and plans for my daughter and my grandson. And it's just it gives you a new outlook on life.
Yeah.
It's bad that sometimes it takes that, but it gives you a new outlook on life, and makes you cherish the things in your life or live better.
Yep.
So it's a blessing that I'm here. I feel bad for the people that didn't make it and their families. So it's just rough out here right now. These are different times.
Yeah. I mean, this is unprecedented. None of us have ever lived through anything like this, but
Right.
I am very, very thankful that you are feeling better. And not only are you feeling better, but as we can see, you are in your patrol car,
Right.
and you back out here, right, masked up, okay,
Right.
but doing what we're called to do, because it takes special people to do your job and to be that frontline hero. And so I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to highlight one of our own and let people know how much that I appreciate you. And just so people understand, this is real. It's real out here.
It is.
So when they're telling you to stay home, stay safe, stay home and stay safe. I'm not a homebody, but I mean, I'm here because I like to see what it looks like on the other side of this. So
Right.
You guys are gonna have your hands full though. So what is it looking like for NPOs right now? As we know, temperatures are going to get warmer. This weekend is raining, but it's still going to be warm. So what do you see, any upcoming challenges with that, or you guys prepared?
we are seeing, even with the warm weather, with it getting warmer, we're seeing larger crowds. They may be at the park, or they may be barbecuing in the front of their house. So we try to understand, but we still have a job to do. We're not out here badgering people. We just want people to be safe and really to understand. And so, if since I've been back, this is my second week back from March 18th, and talking to people or encountering people, I try to let them know that it's real out here and how real it is. And once they hear a part of the story of what I've gone through, I know a few other officers that's gone through this, and to the same point where I did, and we all say the same thing. It's like life or death here. It's not anything to play with. It's really been bad. And you had Captain to die from this, and it's real. It's real for us. It's probably even more real for us because we are out here and we're in contact with people all of the time. So, when I come upon people, I let them know that this is real. And, I haven't had any issues with people saying, oh, we do what we want to, this, that, and the other. Okay. They've actually complied peacefully.
Good.
And, like I said, I understand that, you get cabin fever and you want to get out and you want to do the things that you normally do, but these aren't normal times.
Right.
So you have to treat it as such. So, that's what we're prepared. We have good support staff at command staff at number 12, and even with the chief staff and the police department is doing a good job.
Yeah, no, you all are doing a phenomenal job, and I just want to commend you for your work. And for those that are watching or will watch this later, I'm not pushing my beliefs on anybody else, but I'm going to say to Officer Womack, God is good, and yes. I know that, yes. And that's my opinion, and that's my belief, and I know that He brought you through. So
I share that same belief, and I'm thankful.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for doing what you do every day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions out there, folks? Anybody, if you have a question for DPD, if you have a question for DFD, or if you have a question for our lobbyist and our governmental affairs person, this is your opportunity because you're going to be wrapping up shortly. So if you do, please press *9 and my team will be able to see you and take your question. So Rick or Jalen, are you seeing anything?
No hands raised yet at the moment.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, folks, like I said before, if you have the time, because we all have some form of time, fill out your census, please. Please, please, please fill out your census. We need your numbers. We need you to be counted. We need for you to understand how much you matter. To everyone that was able to join us on the call this morning, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you and everything that you all are doing. To the Detroit residents, thank you for joining us this morning. And thank you for staying home and staying safe. And I just pray just blessings on everyone and their family. We just got to make it, guys. And the best way to do that is follow the orders that are being presented to us, and just stay positive. For the folks that we heard that were out there playing basketball, it ain't that important. I miss basketball too, but it's not worth. See, okay. So that's it. I think we're just gonna go ahead and wrap up. But again, thank you. Thank you to my team for making sure everything ran well. And again, if you all need to get in contact with me, you can call the office 313-224-4248 and leave a message and we will get back with you. Or you can send an email to, this is my email address, Councilmember Ayers, and that's AYERS @DetroitMI.gov. So again, blessings on everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And A team is out.